Hey guys, it's Henry's Dead History and welcome to this week's episode. This week we will be taking a look at John F. Kennedy.
Very good, that's right. This week, welcome guys, TJ here with this Dead History. And this week, we're going to be taking a look at, what number president is he, Henry?
The 35th.
The 35th president of the United States, the man behind us, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, JFK. And before we get into all the amazing things about JFK, Henry, tell the people what they have to do.
Hit subscribe down below, leave all your comments and questions, hit that bell, and give us a thumbs up.
That's right, good job. Hit subscribe down below. Leave us those comments and questions because we love those. Of course, give us a like and a thumbs up and hit the little notification bell because it's going to tell you when we release new videos. And Henry, when does that happen to be?
Every single week.
Every single week, that's right. So now, let's sit back and relax because this is our next presidential series installment, one that Henry and I have been waiting a long time for, one of our favorites. And we're going to be taking a look at the man behind us, the 35th president of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, right?
Yep.
So here we go. Sit back and relax because this is
Dead History.
Dead History. Hey guys, welcome back. And as you see Henry holding up here, an actual original campaign poster of John F. Kennedy, the 35th president of the United States. Right, Henry?
Yep.
Pretty cool stuff. And we also have to show you guys, hold that up, Henry, the actual newspaper from that fateful day of November 22nd of 1963, an original paper that shows the assassination and the death of our 35th president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Well, welcome back. Right, Henry?
Yep,
hello.
Welcome back, hello.
Behind us, the 35th president of the United States. Who, Henry?
John F. Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy. Good old JFK. Some fascinating things to tell you about John F. Kennedy, such as he was a war hero. Many of you probably know the story of PT 109. Yes, we're going to get into all that and how he saved some of his own troops and everybody that he was with, his military men's lives. We're going to get into all that, of course.
Yeah.
Plus, of course, his rise through the military, and then, of course, his political career. And then being elected in 1960 as the 35th president of the United States. Unfortunately, on November 22nd of 1963, John F. Kennedy became our fourth president ever to be assassinated while in office, and he was killed on that fateful day in Dallas, Texas, in Dealey Plaza. We're going to get into all that and show you everything regarding that. Now, they did the likes, they did the subscribe, they did it all, right?
Yes.
Okay? Now, before we get into that, you know, that handsome, charismatic senator from Massachusetts, John F. Kennedy, before we do that, what do they got to go grab, Henry?
The potato chips and the soda and the popcorn and the pretzels.
That's right, the potato chips, the popcorn, the soda, the pretzels, and as you see, a little homage and in honor of Kennedy this week. Henry and I are both wearing some NASA t-shirts because Kennedy was big on the space program and getting us into space as a country. Again, we're going to go over it all. So here we go. Sit back, relax. We're going to take a look in this next presidential series installment at the man behind us, the 35th president of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome. TJ here with Dead History, and welcome to our next presidential series installment, taking a look at the 35th president of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. I am flying solo, of course, for the audio portion of this video. Henry's not with me right now, so he was very adamant about making sure that he did record the video with me. He's been looking forward to the Kennedy video for quite some time, so yes, so we are excited to bring this to you guys. One of my favorite presidents of all time. It was my father's absolute favorite president of all time. and Henry seems to have a liking toward Kennedy as well. So we will jump right in here. Of course, part one, you guys know the deal. You know the drill. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what's going to happen in the format here. Part one will be the birthplace, childhood, early, life and growing up and early political career and, education and all that stuff of the president. And then in part two, we will really get into and dive into the presidency, the legacy, and then, of course, the death and the burial site. Now, of course, with Kennedy, he is the fourth president ever to be assassinated, the last one to be assassinated and killed. So, I really could probably do 3 parts on this and, make the third part all about the assassination. However, I think we're going to do it in 2 parts. I do have a JFK assassination video that I am actually going to leave the link to for that video down below in the description, just because that was the second video I ever did only. It was back on November 22nd of 2020. It's only the second video I ever released. I was still learning about editing and, the proper way to do things and the proper format and everything. It was brand new to me. So, keep that in mind. If you do go watch that assassination video, kind of take it with a grain of salt. That it was early on in my YouTube career, so to speak. So, keep that in mind. So here we go. Moving on. Starting off with the 35th President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. John Fitzgerald Kennedy was born outside of Boston in Brookline, Massachusetts, on May 29th of 1917. He was born, at 83 Beals Street. Born to Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., a businessman and politician, and Rose Kennedy, a philanthropist and socialite. His paternal grandfather, P.J. Kennedy, served as a Massachusetts state legislator. Kennedy's maternal grandfather and namesake, John F. Honey Fitzgerald, served as a U.S. congressman and was elected to 2 terms as mayor of Boston. All 4 of his grandparents were children of Irish immigrants. Kennedy had an elder brother, Joseph Jr., and he had 7 younger siblings, who were Rosemary, Kathleen, who was known as Kick, Eunice, Patricia, Robert, known as Bobby, Jean, and Edward, known as Ted. I apologize for the raspiness of my voice. Just took a drink of water, so should be good to go. So moving on here, Kennedy lived in Brookline for the first 10 years of his life. He attended the local St. Aidan's Church, where he was baptized on June 19th of 1917. He was educated through the 4th grade at the Edward Devotion School, the Noble and Greenough Lower School, and the Dexter School. I think that would be Greenough Lower School. All of these schools were located in the Boston area. JFK's earliest memories involved accompanying his grandfather Fitzgerald on walking tours of historic sites in Boston and discussions at the family dinner table about politics, sparking his interest in history and public service. His father's business had kept him away from the family for long stretches of time, and his ventures were concentrated on Wall Street and Hollywood. In 1927, the Dexter School announced it would not reopen before October after an outbreak of polio in Massachusetts. In September, the family decided to move from Boston by private railway car to the Riverdale neighborhood of New York City. Several years later, his brother Bobby told Look magazine that his father had left Boston because of signs that read, "No Irish need apply." The family spent summers and early autumns at their home in Hyannisport, Massachusetts, a village on Cape Cod, where they enjoyed swimming, sailing, and touch football. Christmas and Easter holidays were spent at their winter retreat in Palm Beach, Florida. Young John attended the Riverdale Country School, a private school for boys, from 5th to 7th grade, and he was a member of the Boy Scout Troop No. 2 in Bronxville, New York. In September of 1930, Kennedy, who was then 13 years old, was shipped off to the Canterbury School in New Milford, Connecticut for 8th grade. In April of 1931, he had an appendectomy, after which he withdrew from Canterbury and recuperated at home. In September of 1931, Kennedy started attending Choate, a prestigious boarding school in Wallingford, Connecticut. He went there for 9th through 12th grade. His older brother, Joe Jr., had already been to Choate for 2 years and was a football player and leading student. He spent his first years at Choate in his older brother's shadow and compensated with rebellious behavior that attracted many. Their most notorious stunt was exploding a toilet seat with a powerful firecracker. In the next chapel assembly, the strict headmaster, George St. John, brandished the toilet seat and spoke of certain muckers who would spit in our sea. Defiantly, Kennedy took a cue and named his group the Muckers Club, which included roommate and lifelong friend Kirk Lemoyne Lem Billings. During his years at Choate, Kennedy was beset by health problems that culminated with his emergency hospitalization in 1934 at Yale New Haven Hospital, where doctors suspected leukemia. In June of 1934, he was admitted to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. The ultimate diagnosis there was colitis. Kennedy graduated from Choate in June of the following year, finishing 64th in a class of 112 students. He had been the business manager of the school yearbook and was voted the most likely to succeed. In September of 1935, Kennedy made his first trip abroad when he traveled to London with his parents and his sister Kathleen. He had intended to study under Harold Lasky at the London School of Economics, as his older brother had done. Ill health forced his return to the United States in October of that year, when he enrolled late and attended Princeton University. But he had to leave after 2 months due to a gastrointestinal illness. He was then hospitalized for observation at Peter Bent Brigham Hospital in Boston. He convalesced further at the family winter home in Palm Beach and then spent the spring of 1936 working as a ranch hand on a 40,000-acre J6 cattle ranch outside of Benson, Arizona. It is reported that ranchman Jack Speeden worked both brothers very hard. In September of 1936, John Kennedy enrolled at Harvard College, and his application essay stated, "The reasons that I have for wishing to go to Harvard are several. I feel that Harvard can give me a better background and a better liberal education than any other university. I have always wanted to go there, as I have felt that it is not just another college, but it is a university with something definite to offer. Then, too, I would like to go to the same college as my father. to be a Harvard man is an inevitable distinction, and one that I sincerely hope I shall attain. He produced that year's annual Freshman Smoker, called by a reviewer an elaborate entertainment, which included in its cast outstanding personalities of the radio, screen, and sports world. Unfortunately, I can't really do a very good Kennedy accent. I can't really get my Boston accent going to read that Harvard College essay in his, the reasons that I have for wishing to go to Harvard are several. I feel that Harvard can give me a better background and a better liberal education than any other university. Not exactly a very good Kennedy, impersonation, so I apologize. He tried out for the football team, golf, and swimming teams, and he earned a spot on the varsity swimming team. He was an excellent swimmer. We all know that. We'll get to that a little later. Kennedy also sailed in the Star class and won the 1936 Nantucket Sound Star Championship. In July of 1937, Kennedy sailed to France, taking his convertible, and spent 10 weeks driving through Europe with Billings. In June of 1938, Kennedy sailed overseas with his father and older brother to work at the American Embassy in London, where his father was President Franklin D. Roosevelt's U.S. ambassador to the Court of St. James. In 1939, Kennedy toured Europe, the Soviet Union, the Balkans, and the Middle East in preparation for his Harvard senior honors thesis. He then went to Berlin, where the U.S. diplomatic representative gave him a secret message about war breaking out soon to pass on to his father, and to Czechoslovakia before returning to London on September 1st of 1939, the day that Germany invaded Poland to mark the beginning of World War II. 2 days later, the family was in the House of Commons for speeches endorsing the United Kingdom's declaration of war on Germany. Kennedy was sent as his father's representative to help with arrangements for American survivors of the SS Athenia before flying back to the U.S. from Foynes, Ireland, on his first transatlantic flight. When Kennedy was an upperclassman at Harvard, he began to take his studies more seriously and developed an interest in political philosophy. He made the dean's list in his junior year. In 1940, Kennedy completed his thesis, Appeasement in Munich, about British negotiations during the Munich Agreement. The thesis eventually became a bestseller under the title, Why England Slept. In addition to addressing Britain's unwillingness to strengthen its military in the leading up to World War II, the book also called for an Anglo-American alliance against the rising totalitarian powers. Kennedy became increasingly supportive of U.S. intervention in World War II, and his father's isolationist beliefs resulted in the latter's dismissal as ambassador to the United Kingdom. This created a split between the Kennedy and Roosevelt families. In 1940, John F. Kennedy graduated cum laude from Harvard with a Bachelor of Arts in Government, concentrating on international affairs. That fall, he enrolled at the Stanford Graduate School of Business and audited classes there. In early 1941, Kennedy left and helped his father write a memoir of his time as an American ambassador. He then traveled through South America. His itinerary included Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. So, pretty cool stuff. Again, I apologize for the lack of any sort of Kennedy impersonation. He says Berlin very, very distinctively, too, like Berlin or something. It's very that Boston accent. Oh, God. That whole thing, over on Yawkey Way there in Boston. So, or it's not even named Yawkey Way anymore outside of Fenway. They changed that. Okay, so that's his early life, birthplace. I did visit the birthplace there in Brookline. It was closed when I visited, of course, in 2020, but I took pictures outside of the home. You probably already have seen a couple of those, maybe seen another one or two of those now. But yes, I did visit where Kennedy was born. You guys will see a lot of Kennedy stuff. I pretty much have gone to everything you can think of Kennedy. I've been to the compound in Hyannisport, or as close as you can get at least. I've been, of course, to Dealey Plaza 2 or 3 times now. I've been in the Texas School Book Depository. You name it. I've been to Oswald's grave. I've been to Kennedy's grave. I've been to the Kennedy family graves, plot. So you're going to see all of that. So just be prepared for a lot of shots that I've taken myself and probably some bonus footage. So be prepared. All right, now we're moving on to his time in the U.S. Navy as a U.S. Naval Reserve. So here we go. Kennedy planned to attend Yale Law School after auditing courses on business law at Stanford, but he canceled when American entry into World War II seemed imminent. In 1940, John Kennedy attempted to enter the Army's Officer Candidate School. Despite months of training, he was medically disqualified due to his chronic lower back problems. On September 24th of 1941, Kennedy, with the help of then Director of the Office of Naval Intelligence and the former naval attaché to Joseph Kennedy, Alan Kirk, he joined the United States Naval Reserve. He was commissioned an ensign on October 26th of 1941, and he joined the staff of the Office of Naval Intelligence in Washington, D.C. In January of 1942, John Kennedy was assigned to the ONI field office at headquarters, 6th Naval District in Charleston, South Carolina. He attended the Naval Reserve Officer Training School at Northwestern University in Chicago from July 27th to September 27th, and then voluntarily entered the Motor Torpedo Boat Squadron's Training Center in Melville, Rhode Island. On October 10th, he was promoted to lieutenant junior grade. In early November, Kennedy was still mourning the death of his close childhood friend, Marine Corps Second Lieutenant George Houck Meade Jr., who had been killed in action at Guadalcanal that August and awarded the Navy Cross for his bravery. Accompanied by a female acquaintance from a wealthy Newport family, the couple had stopped in Middletown, Rhode Island at the cemetery where the decorated naval spy, Commander Hugo W. Coiler, I believe it's Kohler. The USN had been buried the previous year. Ambling around the plots near the tiny St. Columba's Chapel, John Kennedy paused over Kohler's white granite cross grave marker and pondered his own mortality, hoping out loud that when his time came, he would not have to die without religion. But these things can't be faked, he added. There's no bluffing. 2 decades later, Kennedy and Kohler's stepson, U.S. Senator Claiborne Pell, had become good friends and political allies, although they had been acquaintances since the mid-1930s during their salad days on the same Newport debutante party circuit and when Pell had dated Kathleen Kick Kennedy. Kennedy completed his training on December 2nd and was assigned to the Motor Torpedo Squadron 4. His first command was PT-101 from December 7, 1942 until February 23rd of 1943. It was a patrol torpedo boat used for training while Kennedy was an instructor at Melville. He then led 3 Huckins PT boats, the PT-98, the PT-99, and the PT-101, which were being relocated from MT Braun 4 in Melville, Rhode Island, back to Jacksonville, Florida, and the new 2 MT Braun 14 formed February 17 of 1943. During the trip south, Jack was hospitalized briefly in Jacksonville after diving into the cold water to unfoul a propeller. Thereafter, Kennedy was assigned duty in Panama and later in the Pacific Theater, where he eventually commanded 2 more PT boats. In April of 1943, Kennedy was assigned to Motor Torpedo Squadron 2, and on April 24th, he took command of the PT-109, which was based at the time on Tulagi Island in the Solomons. On the night of August 1st to the 2nd, in support of the New Georgia campaign, PT-109 was on its 31st mission with 14 other PTs ordered to block or repel 4 Japanese destroyers and floatplanes carrying food, supplies, and 900 Japanese soldiers to the Villa Plantation garrison on the southern tip of the Solomons, Columbagara Island. Intelligence had been sent to Kennedy's commander, Thomas G. Warfield, expecting the arrival of the large Japanese naval force that would pass on the evening of August 1st. Of the 24 torpedoes fired that night by 8 of the American PTs, not one of them hit the Japanese convoy. On that dark and moonless night, Kennedy spotted a Japanese destroyer heading north on its return from the base of Columbagara around 2 a.m. and attempted to turn to attack when PT-109 was rammed suddenly at an angle and cut in half by the destroyer Amagiri, killing 2 PT-109 crew members. Kennedy gathered around the wreckage his surviving 10 crew members to vote on whether to fight or surrender. Kennedy stated, "There's nothing in the book about a situation like this. A lot of you men have families, and some of you have children. What do you want to do? I have nothing to lose." Shunning surrender around 2 p.m. on August 2nd, the men swam towards Plum Pudding Island, 3.5 miles southwest of the remains of PT-109. Despite re-injuring his back in the collision, Kennedy towed a badly burned crewman through the water to the island with a life jacket strap clenched between his teeth. Kennedy made an additional 2-mile swim the night of August 2nd, 1943, to Ferguson Passage to attempt to hail a passing American PT boat to expedite his crew's rescue, and attempted to make the trip on a subsequent night in a damaged canoe found on Nauru Island, where he had swum with Ensign George Ross to look for food. Yes, he did swim one of his crewmen to safety with the life jacket strap clenched in his teeth. It's a very famous story. It is a true story. Quite heroic, no doubt. And goes to the point I said earlier about being just an unbelievable swimmer. I mean, can you imagine the strength and the swimming strength you have to be able to do that? Incredible. On August 4th of 1943, he and his executive officer, Ensign Lenny Thome, assisted his injured and hungry crew on a demanding swim 3.75 miles southeast to Olasana Island, which was visible to the crew from their desolate home on Plum Pudding Island. They swam against a strong current, and once again Kennedy towed the badly burned motor machinist, Pappy McMahon, by his life vest. The somewhat larger Olasana Island had ripe coconut trees, but still no fresh water. On the following day of August 5th, Kennedy and Ensign George Ross made the 1-hour swim to Nauru Island, an additional distance of about half a mile southwest, in search of help and food. Kennedy and Ross found a small canoe, packages of crackers, candy, and a 50-gallon drum of drinkable water left by the Japanese, which Kennedy paddled another half-mile back to Olasana in the acquired canoe to provide his hungry crew. Native coast watchers Bayaki Gasa and Araoni Kumana first discovered the 109 crew on Olasana Island and paddled their messages to Ben Kivu, a senior scout who sent them on to Coast Watcher Lieutenant Reginald Evans. On the morning of August 7th, Evans radioed the PT base on Rendova. Lieutenant Bud Lebenow, a friend and former tent mate of Kennedy's, rescued Kennedy and his crew on Olasana Island on August 8th of 1943 aboard his boat, the PT-157. It only took Kennedy a month to recover and return to duty, commanding the PT-59. He and his crew removed the original torpedo tubes and depth charts and refitted the vessel into a heavily armored gunboat, mounting 2 automatic 40mm guns and 10 50-caliber Browning machine guns. The new plan involved attaching a gunboat to each PT boat section, adding gun range and defensive power against barges and shore batteries, with the 59, which the 59 went on to encounter on several occasions from mid-October to mid-November. On October 8th of 1943, John Kennedy was promoted to full lieutenant. On November 2nd, Kennedy's PT-59 took part with 2 other PTs in the successful rescue of 40 to 50 Marines. The 59 acted as a shield from shore fire and protected them as they escaped on 2 rescue landing craft at the base of the Warrior River at Chosul Island, taking 10 Marines aboard and delivering them to safety. And under doctor's orders, Kennedy was relieved of his command of the PT-59 on November 18th and sent to the hospital on Tulagi. From there, he returned to the United States in early January of 1944, and after receiving treatment for his back injury, he was released from active duty in late 1944. Kennedy was hospitalized at the Chelsea Naval Hospital in Chelsea, Massachusetts, from May to December of 1944. On June 12th, he was presented the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for his heroic actions on August 1st and 2nd of 1943, and he was awarded the Purple Heart Medal for his back injury while on PT-109. Beginning in January of 1945, John Kennedy spent 3 more months recovering from his back injury at Castle Hot Springs, a resort and temporary military hospital in Arizona. After the war, Kennedy felt that the medal he had received for heroism was not a combat award and asked that he be reconsidered for the Silver Star Medal, for which he had been recommended initially. Kennedy's father also requested that his son receive the Silver Star, which is awarded for gallantry in action. On August 12th of 1944, Kennedy's older brother Joe Jr., a Navy pilot, was killed while on a special and hazardous air mission for which he had volunteered. His explosive-laden plane blew up when the plane's bombs detonated prematurely while the aircraft was flying over the English Channel. On March 1st of 1945, Kennedy retired from the Navy Reserve on physical disability and was honorably discharged with the full rank of lieutenant. When he was later asked how he became a war hero, John Kennedy joked, "It was easy. They cut my PT boat in half." In 1950, the Department of the Navy offered Kennedy a Bronze Star Medal in recognition of his meritorious service, which he declined. Kennedy's 2 original medals are currently on display at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. So there you go. He, in addition to the various campaign medals received, he received the Navy and Marine Corps Medal, the Purple Heart, the American Defense Service Medal, the American Campaign Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal with 3 stars, and the World War II Victory Medal. So he was quite a decorated war hero and extremely heroic in his PT days, of course. Now, moving on from his military service, journalism. In April of 1945, John Kennedy's father, who was a friend of William Randolph Hearst, arranged a position for his son as a special correspondent for Hearst newspapers. The assignment kept Kennedy's name in the public eye and exposed him to journalism as a possible career. He worked as a correspondent that May and went to Berlin for a second time, covering the Potsdam Conference and other events. John F. Kennedy's elder brother, Joe, had been the family's political standard bearer and had been tapped by their father to seek the presidency. Joe's death during the war in 1944 changed that course, and the assignment fell to JFK as the second eldest son of the Kennedy siblings. So I just wanted to touch on, Joe Kennedy, very, how do I put this politely? Joe Kennedy wasn't the nicest or greatest of men. He was a very ruthless man. He participated in a lot of criminal activity. He just wasn't a very good man, Joe Kennedy. Very smart man, shrewd businessman. But he was ruthless. He got what he wanted at any cost, did not care. Joe Kennedy's big thing was having Joe Jr. eventually seek the presidency. Of course, when Joe Jr. was killed in the war in 1944, that changed the course of history forever. And then, of course, John Kennedy took over, being now the eldest son, to take over the political career of the Kennedy family. There's a very famous kind of depiction in many books over the years and even in some movies of, Joe was still alive when JFK was assassinated. There's depictions of, someone had to go in and tell him. I want to even say it might have even been Ted Kennedy. I could be wrong on that. But that had to go in and tell his father, that, Jack had been killed. And, obviously not a very pleasant moment for anyone. And, I guess the story goes that Joe was an older man at that point. But I guess he lived with a lot of regret for the rest of his days, knowing that, he pushed his son toward politics and the presidency and that sort of thing. So there's a little bit about that. Now, as far as JFK's political career, the House of Representatives from 1947 to 1953. At the urging of Kennedy's father, U.S. Representative James Michael Curley vacated his seat in the strongly Democratic 11th Congressional District of Massachusetts to become mayor of Boston in 1946. Kennedy established his residency at an apartment building on 122 Bowdoin Street, across from the Massachusetts State House, with his father financing and running his campaign under the slogan, "The New Generation Offers a Leader." Kennedy won the Democratic primary with 42% of the vote, defeating 10 other candidates. His father joked after the campaign, "With the money I spent, I could have elected my chauffeur." Campaigning around Boston, Kennedy called for better housing for veterans, better health care for all, and support for organized labor's campaign for reasonable work hours, a healthy workplace, and the right to organize, bargain, and strike. In addition, he campaigned for peace through the United Nations and strong opposition to the Soviet Union. Though Republicans took control of the House in the 1946 elections, Kennedy defeated his Republican opponent in the general election, taking 73% of the vote. Along with Richard Nixon and Joseph McCarthy, Kennedy was one of several World War II veterans elected to Congress that year. He served in the House for 6 years, joining the influential Education and Labor Committee and the Veterans Affairs Committee. He concentrated his attention on international affairs, supporting the Truman Doctrine as the appropriate response to the emerging Cold War. He also supported public housing and opposed the Labor Management Relations Act of 1947, which restricted the power of labor unions. Though not as vocal and anti-communist as McCarthy, Kennedy supported the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952, which required communists to register with the government, and he deplored the loss of China. Having served as a Boy Scout during his childhood, John Kennedy was active in the Boston Council from 1946 to 1955 as district vice chairman, member of the executive board, vice president, as well as a national council representative. Almost every weekend that Congress was in session, Kennedy would fly back to Massachusetts to give speeches to veteran, fraternal, and civic groups while maintaining an index card file on individuals who might be helpful for a future campaign for statewide office. JFK set a goal of speaking in every city and town in Massachusetts prior to 1952. As early as 1949, Kennedy began preparing to run for the Senate in 1952 against Republican three-term incumbent Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. with the campaign slogan, "Kennedy will do more for Massachusetts." Joseph Kennedy again financed his son's candidacy, while John Kennedy's younger brother, Robert Kennedy, emerged as an important member of the campaign as manager. The campaign hosted a series of teas sponsored by Kennedy's mother and sisters at hotels and parlors across Massachusetts to reach out to women voters. In the presidential election, Republican Dwight D. Eisenhower carried Massachusetts by a margin of 208,000 votes, but Kennedy defeated Lodge by 70,000 votes for the Senate seat. The following year, he married Jacqueline Bouvier. Kennedy underwent several spinal operations over the next 2 years. He was often absent from the Senate. He was at times critically ill and received Catholic last rites. During his convalescence in 1956, he published Profiles in Courage, a book about U.S. senators who risked their careers for their personal beliefs, for which he won the Pulitzer Prize for biography in 1957. Rumors that his work was co-written by his close advisor and speechwriter Ted Sorensen were confirmed in Sorensen's 2008 autobiography. At the start of his first term, Kennedy focused on Massachusetts-specific issues by sponsoring bills to help the fishing, textile manufacturing, and watchmaking industries. In 1954, Senator Kennedy voted in favor of the St. Lawrence Seaway, which would connect the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean, despite opposition from Massachusetts politicians who argued that the project would cripple New England's shipping industry, including the Port of Boston. 3 years later, Kennedy chaired a special committee to select the 5 greatest U.S. senators in history so their portraits could decorate the Senate reception room. That same year, Kennedy joined the Senate Labor Rackets Committee with his brother Bobby, who was chief counsel, to investigate crime infiltration of labor unions. In 1958, Kennedy introduced a bill which became the first major labor relations bill to pass either house since the Taft-Hartley Act of 1947. The bill dealt largely with the control of union abuses exposed by the McClellan Committee, but did not incorporate the tough Taft-Hartley amendments requested by President Eisenhower. It survived Senate floor attempts to include Taft-Hartley amendments and gained passage, but was rejected by the House. At the 1956 Democratic National Convention, Kennedy gave the nominating speech for the party's presidential nominee, Adlai Stevenson II. Stevenson let the convention select the vice presidential nominee. Kennedy finished second in the balloting, losing to Senator Estes Kefauver of Tennessee, but receiving national exposure as a result. A matter demanding Kennedy's attention in the Senate was President Eisenhower's bill for the Civil Rights Act of 1957. Kennedy cast a procedural vote against it, and this was considered by some to be an appeasement of Southern Democratic opponents of the bill. Kennedy did vote for Title III of the Act, which would have given the Attorney General powers to enjoin, but Majority Leader Lyndon B. Johnson agreed to let the provision die as a compromise measure. Kennedy also voted for Title IV, termed the Jury Trial Amendment. Many civil rights advocates at the time criticized that vote as one which would weaken the act. A final compromise bill, which Kennedy supported, was passed in September of 1957. He proposed on July 2nd of 1957 that the U.S. support Algeria's effort to gain independence from France. The following year, Kennedy authored A Nation of Immigrants, which analyzed the importance of immigration in the country's history, as well as proposals to reevaluate immigration law. In 1958, Kennedy was reelected to a second term in the Senate, defeating Republican opponent, Boston lawyer Vincent J. Celeste by a margin of 874,608 votes, the largest margin in the history of Massachusetts politics. It was during his re-election campaign that Kennedy's press secretary at the time, Robert E. Thompson, put together a film entitled The U.S. Senator John F. Kennedy Story, which exhibited a day in the life of the senator and showcased his family life as well as the inner workings of his office to solve Massachusetts-related issues. It was the most comprehensive film produced about Kennedy up to that time. In the aftermath of his re-election, Kennedy began preparing to run for president by traveling throughout the U.S. with the aim of building his candidacy for 1960. When it came to conservation, Kennedy, a Massachusetts Audubon Society supporter, wanted to make sure that the shorelines of Cape Cod remain unsullied by future industrialization. On September 3rd of 1959, Kennedy co-sponsored the Cape Cod National Seashore Bill with his Republican colleague, Senator Leverett Saltonstall. Kennedy's father was a strong supporter and friend of Senator Joseph McCarthy. Additionally, Bobby Kennedy worked for McCarthy's subcommittee, and McCarthy dated Kennedy's sister Patricia. Kennedy told historian Arthur M. Schlesinger Jr., "Hell, half my voters, particularly Catholics in Massachusetts, look on McCarthy as a hero." In 1954, the Senate voted to censor McCarthy, and Kennedy drafted a speech supporting the censure. However, it was not delivered because Kennedy was hospitalized at the time. The speech put Kennedy in the apparent position of participating by pairing his vote against that of another senator and opposing the censure. Although Kennedy never indicated how he would have voted, the episode damaged his support among members of the liberal community, including Eleanor Roosevelt, in the 1956 and 1960 elections. So there you have it. That's the look at Kennedy all the way up to the 1960 election and his presidency. Of course, now we'll kind of go over some fun things, some fun little facts and that sort of thing. I do want to get into real quick here. Let me just get my notes together. So Kennedy met his future wife, Jacqueline Lee Jackie Bouvier, when he was a congressman. Charles L. Bartlett, a journalist, introduced the pair at a dinner party. They were married a year after he was elected senator on September 12th of 1953. And after suffering a miscarriage in 1955 and a stillbirth in 1956, which was their daughter Arabella, their daughter Caroline was born in 1957 and is the only surviving member of JFK's immediate family. Caroline Kennedy, that is. John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr., nicknamed John by the press as a child, was born in late November of 1960, 17 days after his father was elected. John Jr., who was a graduate of Brown University, died in 1999 when the small plane he was piloting crashed en route to Martha's Vineyard. In 1963, months before JFK's assassination, Jackie gave birth to a son, Patrick. However, Patrick died after 2 days due to complications from birth. So, another thing I wanted to mention is what you're going to see here now on the screen are pictures of the church in which Jackie and John F. Kennedy were married in. This is actually in Rhode Island. I visited there, I think it was probably around the fall of last year. Yeah, it's cool. I didn't go inside, of course. Couldn't. You weren't able to go inside, but still pretty cool nonetheless. It is, just so everybody knows, it's the St. Mary's Church in Newport, Rhode Island. There is a plaque outside that says, this is where they got married. So you're going to see some pictures of, my pictures of the church when I visited, and also pictures of their wedding, which obviously are not my pictures. They're stock photos I found online. But yes, that is the St. Mary's Church in Newport, Rhode Island, where Jackie and JFK were married. So pretty cool stuff. Also, there's a picture that I want to show here in a second of another cool Jackie and JFK tie. So the picture that you're seeing now from my car, that was when Henry and I were just recently down in D.C. visiting. That place, that picture is called Martin's Tavern. Martin's Tavern is located at 1264 Wisconsin Avenue Northwest in Georgetown, which is Washington, D.C. And it was actually inside Martin's Tavern on June 24th of 1953 that the then Senator John F. Kennedy proposed marriage to Jacqueline Bouvier. And actually, I'm pretty sure inside the booth, there's a booth there that's marked with a plaque that says that was the booth that they were sitting in when he proposed marriage. So, pretty cool stuff. Henry and I didn't get a chance to go inside there, but still pretty darn cool. Just some Jackie and JFK ties there I wanted to show you. So now let's go over some fun facts before we end this part one of our look at the young life and early political career of JFK. Now, again, a little disclaimer. Please keep in mind that I have a ton of notes. I always take a ton of notes for all presidents, but there's really a lot, of course, for JFK. Plus, I'm such a huge JFK fan that, so I might start to repeat something that I already said, and then I'll kind of just stop that quick. I'm just going to go down my notes. These are all fun facts leading up to his presidency. So anything that happened when he was president, we'll get into that stuff in part 2, of course. As I had said, his family was very, very rich. President Kennedy was one of the richest presidents ever, based on the estimated value of his family's fortune. In fact, his part of that fortune may have been worth $1 billion at the time of Kennedy's death in 1963. His father, Joseph Kennedy, was involved heavily in Wall Street and other investment opportunities. So, very rich family. Joseph Kennedy, his father, he escaped a terrorist attack just after JFK was born. Joseph Kennedy escaped the infamous 1920 Wall Street bombing. An unknown group of anarchists planted a bomb in a wagon full of lead weights on the street. The explosion killed 38 bystanders on Wall Street, and the elder Kennedy was thrown to the ground by the blast, but he was unharmed. Didn't know that. JFK, he grew up partly in the Bronx. The boogie down Bronx. Yes. Where the Yankees play. Where Yankee Stadium is. The stereotype of Kennedy is that he was born and bred Bostonian. In reality, Kennedy spent the first 10 years of his life in Brookline, a suburb of Boston. But until his family moved to the Bronx. The future president spent his middle school years in the Bronx area until his family sent him to a private school in Connecticut. Pretty cool, right? I thought that was pretty cool. This was cool. Kennedy played the role of movie producer. Warren Beatty almost played Kennedy in the movie PT-109, which was based on the sinking of Kennedy's boat in the Solomon Islands. President Kennedy wanted Cliff Robertson to play a young Lieutenant Kennedy in the war movie, but the First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, she wanted Warren Beatty. The president's choice wound up appearing in the 1963 movie. Kennedy also helped pick the movie's director. Pretty interesting, kind of like a producer. Didn't know that. That's about his presidency. Presidency. Kennedy was an experienced politician at a young age. In 1946, Kennedy ran for the House of Representatives at the age of only 29, and he won. His older brother had been expected to be the family's political standard bearer, but he was killed in action during World War II. Kennedy was elected 3 times to the House and 2 times to the U.S. Senate before becoming president. And he had more national political experience than our 2 most recent presidents. Health problems did keep Kennedy from attending Congress for some periods. Here's one. Kennedy almost died twice before he became president, not including his run-in with a Japanese ship on the PT-109. Kennedy long suffered with health problems. Today, those health issues are well documented, and 2 incidents resulted in a priest giving Kennedy last rites in a hospital. In 1948, when Kennedy was in Great Britain, his health looked dire after he was diagnosed with Addison's disease, according to author Robert Dallek. And in 1954, Kennedy nearly died from an infection after back surgery. So pretty crazy stuff. He and Jackie Kennedy had 4 children. In addition to Caroline and John Jr., the Kennedys had 2 other children. In 1956, Jackie gave birth to a stillborn girl, whom the couple intended to name Arabella. And on August 7th of 1963, Patrick Bouvier Kennedy was born 5.5 weeks early. Patrick weighed under 5 pounds and he died 2 days later from a pulmonary disease. And of course, the bodies of the 2 children were removed from Massachusetts in 1963 to be next to their father in Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. Kennedy received last rites 3 times before his presidency. Kennedy suffered from poor health his entire life, and fearing imminent death, America's first Catholic president received the sacramental last rites of the church on 3 occasions. On a trip to England in 1947, Kennedy fell ill and was given perhaps a year to live after being diagnosed with Addison's disease, a rare disorder of the adrenal glands. Returning to America aboard the Queen Mary, Kennedy was so ill that a priest was summoned to administer last rites. He received the sacrament again in 1951 after suffering from an extremely high fever while traveling in Asia, and in 1954 after he slipped into a coma from an infection after surgery to address his chronic back problems. Crazy. 3 times they thought he was going to die. I mentioned this. The Army medically disqualified Kennedy from service. In the months before the U.S. entered World War II, Kennedy attempted to enlist in the military, but his intestinal and back problems caused him to fail the physical examinations for both the Army's and Navy's officer candidate schools. Using his father's connections, however, the future president was admitted to the Navy in October of 1941. As a commanding officer of PT-109, he became a wartime hero after helping his crewmates survive the gunboat's 1943 sinking. He won a Pulitzer Prize, as I said. Kennedy authored his first book, Why England Slept, at age of only 22. And in 1945, he spent a few months as a newspaper correspondent for William Randolph Hearst newspapers covering the United Nations Conference in San Francisco and the aftermath of the World War II in Europe. In 1957, a Pulitzer Prize in biography was awarded to Kennedy for Profiles in Courage, although there has since been controversy as to how much of the book was ghostwritten by his aide, Theodore Sorensen. Kennedy briefly attended Princeton University. Prior to his enrollment at Harvard, the future president in 1935 began his undergraduate career at another Ivy League institution, Princeton University, here in New Jersey. His stint there was brief. A gastrointestinal illness forced him to leave Princeton after only 2 months, and after convalescing, he transferred to Harvard. This is cool. He donated his congressional and presidential salary to charity. Kennedy's father built a family fortune, and when the young politician entered Congress in 1947, he earned sufficiently ample annual income from trusts established by his father that he decided to donate his entire legislative salary to various charities. Kennedy quietly maintained the practice as president after becoming the richest man to ever take the oath of office. So, there you go. Pretty cool stuff there. Let me see here. Received last rites. So this one even says a total of 4 times. Well, of course, I think they're referring to in the assassination. He faked his way into the Navy. Kennedy's ongoing health problems became an issue when he attempted to enlist in the military. Kennedy used the riches and influence of his father to become a naval officer. The old man persuaded friends in the military to accept a certificate of good health, a false one, from a family doctor. Crazy, right? Excuse me. We know about the war hero. Oh, this is cool. A memento from JFK's near-death experience was an Oval Office fixture. I tell you, my voice is gone. I apologize to everybody because I coach Henry's traveling 7-year-old tournament baseball team, and we've had practice several times over the last couple of weeks. So yelling on the baseball field, I'm always loud. My voice is gone. So, all right, about that cool memento from his near-death experience. In an attempt to get help for himself and his marooned crew of fellow officers, Kennedy etched an SOS message into a coconut shell, which he gave to 2 natives to deliver to a nearby base in order to arrange for their rescue. As a reminder of the incident, Kennedy had that coconut encased in wood and plastic and used it as a paperweight. It sat on his desk in the Oval Office. That's pretty cool. The wreck of John F. Kennedy's PT-109 was discovered nearly 60 years later. In 2002, famed deep-sea explorer Robert Ballard discovered the wreck of Kennedy and his crew's PT-109 boat about 1,200 feet below the water surface during a National Geographic expedition. I'm very pleased because it was a real needle in a haystack. Probably the toughest needle I've ever had to find, Ballard said, which was quite a testament as Ballard also discovered the Titanic. Pretty crazy. Kennedy is the only president to ever have received a Purple Heart. Though recent presidential candidates John Kerry and John McCain both received Purple Hearts for their service during wartime, Kennedy is the only president to boast the honor. He received it after being wounded in action on August 22nd of 1943. This is a fun little story, in fact. Bobby Kennedy, he got a little wild at JFK's wedding. This is fun. When JFK married Jacqueline Bouvier on September 12th of 1953 in Newport, Rhode Island, his brother Bobby served as his best man. But that best man got a little wild. According to Evan Thomas's Robert Kennedy, His Life, Bobby behaved like a naughty teenager stealing a policeman's hat on his brother's wedding day. Joe Kennedy was furious. He summoned Bobby and his co-conspirators, his brother Teddy and some younger cousins, and gave them a lecture about disgracing the family name. When Bobby tried to speak up, Joe snapped, "No, you keep quiet and listen to me. This is childish behavior, and I don't want anything more like it." Oh boy. Pretty interesting, funny stuff. Those wild Kennedys. Of course, we said, Pulitzer Prize. So Sorensen, Ted Sorensen, in 2008, he actually told the Wall Street Journal that he did a first draft of most chapters, and he helped choose the words of many of its sentences, and likely privately boasted or indirectly hinted that I had written much of the book. So Sorensen definitely admitted that he did. This is fun. JFK got into a fender bender with Larry King. In 1958, Larry King got into a car accident with JFK, who was then a senator, while in Palm Beach, Florida. In his autobiography, King wrote about how he had just arrived to the area from Brookline and was so distracted by this swanky South Florida locale that he wasn't really paying attention to the road. And Kennedy was pretty angry about the whole incident. "How could you?" Kennedy yelled. "Early Sunday morning, no traffic, not a cloud in the sky, I'm parked, how could you run into me?" All I could say was, "Senator, do you want to exchange information from our driver's licenses?" King replied, writing that eventually he calmed down and he said he'd forget the whole thing if we just promised to vote for him when he ran for president. We did, and he drove away, though not before saying, "Stay way behind me." I thought that was pretty fun. Okay, yep, we know that. Joe donated all his salary to charity. We got all that. Okay. This is fun. JFK was a James Bond fanatic. In 1955, JFK was given a copy of Ian Fleming's first James Bond book, Casino Royale, and was immediately intrigued by the character. In 1962, he hosted a private screening of Dr. No at the White House. When he was asked to name his 10 favorite books, he listed From Russia with Love at number 9. In a documentary included in the Bond 50th Anniversary Blu-ray collection, Kennedy was quoted as saying, "I wish I had James Bond on my staff." It's pretty funny. I think we're good there. Yeah. Okay, let me see. Let me just make sure. I just want to make sure I have no other notes for you guys here. As I touched on, famous family, of course. Rose and Joseph Kennedy. His father, Joseph Kennedy, was extremely wealthy and powerful. Franklin Roosevelt named Joseph Kennedy the head of the U.S. Secretaries and Exchange Commission and appointed him ambassador to Great Britain in 1938. One of 9 children, JFK had several siblings who were also involved in politics. During Kennedy's presidency, he appointed Robert Kennedy, Attorney General. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things. Ted Kennedy, of course, big-time politician. Kennedy, of course, poor health from childhood. Kennedy suffered from a variety of physical ailments throughout his life. He contracted scarlet fever as a toddler and was hospitalized. And as he grew older, he had chronic back problems and underwent back surgery several times. In 1947, he was diagnosed with Addison's disease, thought to be the result of corticosteroids that were used to combat his ongoing gastrointestinal disease. So I guess it was steroids, they thought. Jacqueline Bouvier, John Kennedy's wife, was also born into wealth as a daughter of John Bouvier III and Janet Lee. Jackie attended Vassar and George Washington University before graduating with a degree in French literature. After graduation, she worked as a photographer for the Washington Times-Herald before marrying JFK. So pretty interesting stuff. Of course, we know he was Pulitzer Prize. Okay, we're good there. I always got to look because you never know. Because believe me, there's a lot of stuff that sometimes I miss, and then I go, oh, I can't believe I did that. And I get a little upset that I didn't. Greatest paperweight in history. Many people are unaware of JFK's military service. As I had said, the ship was destroyed. His crew was marooned on the Solomon Islands, and Jack did what he could, having no manner of communicating a message to the Allies or a nearby base. He carved a message into a coconut husk and had natives deliver it to the PT base. Nauro ISL commander, native knows Posit. He can pilot. 11 alive. Needs small boat. Kennedy. The husk was eventually encased and became his Oval Office paperweight. Pretty cool stuff. I think that's pretty much going to be it for the most part. Let me just make sure. You guys will be like, hey, what are you doing? That was supposed to be in part 1. I think we're pretty good. If there's anything that comes up, for that I could have went over, I will definitely include it in part 2. But I think we're pretty good. So there you go. That is a look at. No. See that? See what happens there? I found something else. While in high school, John F. Kennedy was a right-handed baseball pitcher and third baseman. Later on in his life, he would be responsible for throwing the opening pitch on April 8th of 1963 for the Washington Senators during their game against the Baltimore Orioles. So, pretty cool. Just a little fun thing there. I like that. He was quite sick through his childhood. We already got all that. I think that's pretty much it. I do. I really think that's pretty much it. Okay, so part 1. Hope you enjoyed it. Birthplace, childhood, his growing up, his education, Harvard, writing books, Pulitzer Prize. Did he really even write most of it? Sorensen said he didn't. Who knows? PT 109. Of course, war hero, House of Representatives, senator, all the way up to the presidency. So there you go. That's a look at the early life of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, our 35th president of the United States. So now, part 2 tomorrow, we will get into the presidency, which he was only in office for about 3 years, keep in mind, before he was assassinated. So his presidency, his legacy, and then, of course, that fateful day on November 22nd of 1963 when John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas. Thanks for joining. Hope you enjoyed this part 1, and we will see you tomorrow. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye now.